surely you guys, and I don't mean Democrats, I mean you guys, as in our elected representatives, need to find a way to move this forward without going back to these positions. No, we won't do this until they do that. There has to be a middle ground, Congresswoman.
I agree. And look, a lot of the benefits for SNAP, for instance, are highest in red states, in red southern states. But it doesn't matter to me that these people voted for Donald Trump. It doesn't matter to me if they're MAGA. I don't care. I don't want to see any American go hungry. When I'm here in the district every weekend, I have people coming up to me nonstop at the grocery store, on the street, saying, please stand strong. Don't give in. I can't lose access to health care. This is too important for me, too important for my family. So that is a bright line for me, something that my constituents have been extremely clear about. We have been talking about the SNAP benefits now, about this being a risk for weeks now. It is my position, it's been the position of AGs, it's been the position of the Democratic Party that the emergency reserves in the SNAP program were meant exactly for a government shutdown and other funding interruptions. Why do we think that? Because it's literally written into the bill. Why did it take a court order for the Trump administration to do the right thing and prevent Americans from going hungry? Why did the Trump administration say, we're not going to release SNAP funds, sue us? Why did it take a judge saying, this is clearly written into the bill that these emergency funds are to be used in case of a government shutdown, feed Americans? Why did it take that? But instead of scrambling to find a way to fill people's EBT cards and make sure they don't go hungry, we've got a president who spent half the night tweeting photos of his new gilded bathroom so that he can be comfortable when he goes and has a poo.
Moving on from that as quickly as we can, Burbank Airport is in the heart of your district. That's here. Right. It had a ground stop a few weeks ago as a result of apparently air traffic controllers calling out not enough there. Yeah. We saw a collision between two United aircraft at LaGuardia last night. We don't know how much or if at all that was related to the shutdown. But Americans are scared with the travel season almost upon us. Yep. For Thanksgiving, etc. Americans are scared. What do you tell your constituents about the safety of flying and traveling right now?
I want the government to reopen. I want it to reopen tomorrow. I wanted it to reopen last week. That's why I was in Washington, D.C., begging my Republican colleagues to come back to town. Democrats have been there week in and week out. If you look at any of our social media, you will see us in Washington asking our colleagues to come to the table. And you're absolutely right. To have compromise, you've got to have two sides that are willing to talk. And so far, we've got a Republican Party that's saying we control the majority, we don't have to talk to Democrats, we don't have to take their input, and I think that's terrible for the nation.
Congresswoman Laura Friedman.
Joining us now is Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. She's a member of the Judiciary and Oversight Committees. Congressman, I want to ask you, first of all, thank you for coming on. There's rumblings of discussions to reopen the government. Maybe small gangs of senators are reportedly working to find a way out. But, of course, Senate Majority Leader John Thune said he won't discuss any Affordable Care Act changes until the government is open. What have you heard, and is there a possibility of any breakthrough happening soon?
You know, I am not convinced if there is a possibility of a breakthrough as it relates to it coming from the top down. I think that this is going to have to be a bottom-up effort. You know, there's been a lot of discussions about how much travel has been interfered with and how many planes have had to be canceled. I think that those are the types of things, those types of disruptions, the disruptions as it relates to SNAP benefits and WIC benefits. I think that those are the rumblings of the people that will finally solve this. Unfortunately, we have people that are not prioritizing the very people that put them into power, starting with the President of the United States, who has failed to sit down with the four corners, the leaders within the House as well as the Senate, to decide that they were going to come to a resolution to make sure that we can move forward in a way that benefits not just red states, not just blue states, but benefits the United States.
I mean, there just doesn't seem to be that much of a sense of urgency from the White House or Republicans. And does that tell you that they think they can end this shutdown without capitulating, without giving in to Democrats' demands?
You know, I don't know what it says. I mean, it is very hard to say that you can predict anything when it comes to this White House, especially when it comes to this particular president. I will tell you that, you know, it seems like he's not on the same page with the Republicans. We know that here recently he basically said, hey, just go ahead and explore the nuclear option. You know, they've been trying to blame this on the Democrats the entire time, when those of us who understand how things work, they have exploited the nuclear option more than once. And I'm not suggesting that they should. I'm actually suggesting that there's two ways out. Number one, you can either explore the nuclear option, which means that we reduce the threshold from 60 down to an even 50, or you could do what like most real politicians would do. They would actually negotiate. And if you are willing to talk about what it is that we can do as it relates to the Affordable Care Act on the back end, then why can't you talk about it on the front end? In addition to that, I do want to point out, because the House has failed to go in under the failed leadership of Johnson right now, here's the issue. We could be going through and getting through the actual appropriations bills, because the continuing resolution is only supposed to be a stopgap until we actually do our work. Well, considering the fact that we've been sitting this out, we could have been working. We could have been going through the 12 appropriations bills and getting those over to the Senate, and then we would at least potentially not even need the stopgap, or we'd be able to put different governmental departments back online because we've completed the actual appropriations. Yet Mike Johnson doesn't want to bring us back.
I also want to ask you about SNAP. Yesterday, a federal judge ordered the Trump administration to keep paying those benefits during the shutdown, but it's unclear if or even when the 42 million Americans who rely on food stamps are going to get them, and 3.5 million people in your state of Texas. So what is your response to Republicans who are saying maybe we should take another look at this program because too many Americans are on SNAP? And what are you hearing from your constituents?
Well, I will tell you this. I will agree with them on one thing. I will agree that there are too many American people that are on SNAP benefits. But that means that you got to not look necessarily at SNAP. You got to look at the reasons that they're on SNAP. We know that over 1/4 of these people that are in receipt of SNAP benefits are actually the working poor in this country, right? We have not increased the minimum wage, and I don't know when, and the minimum wage still sits at $7 while everything else is going up, whether we're talking about the cost of food or whether we're talking about the cost of rent or whether we're talking about the cost to actually try to engage in home ownership, if we're talking about the interest rates. And we know that under the failed leadership of this administration, this country has seen a loss of 1 million jobs, and that's just in the first few months. He's not even had a full year. So no, we need to work on economic policies that will put people into a position in which they are not the working poor, where they are still needing the $6 a day to eat. So yes, we need to talk about it, but I don't think that SNAP is the problem. I think that that is the resolution, or at least that is a symptom of the problem. We have a bigger problem in which we have billionaires that are continuing to rise up every single day and are getting richer and richer, to the extent that there was talk about Elon becoming a trillionaire, the first one in this country or in the world. Yet we still have people that have to go to the food bank and go to work, that have to sit there and go to make sure that they've got money on their SNAP and EBT cards. Like, that's a problem, and I do think that we need to address it.
And you mentioned it's about 30% have income, but that number goes up to 55% of SNAP users if you include families with children. I also want to ask you about another huge cost right now, and that's health insurance. The Kaiser Family Foundation estimates about 17% of your state's population did not have coverage in 2024, and more than 1 million might become uninsured if these subsidies expired. What impact do you think that will have on families in your state? And are you hearing concern across the aisle on this issue?
I am absolutely hearing concerns kind of in general, and many of those on the other side of the aisle do not want to admit it publicly. You have pretty much only really seen Marjorie Taylor Greene be honest about this.
Me too.
Well, Megan, of course, all this is happening as President Trump is throwing a lavish Gatsby-themed Halloween party and posting about redoing a White House bathroom entirely in marble. What are the optics there?
I mean, the optics are terrible just with like tearing down the entire East Wing or giving $40 billion to Argentina to bail them out. It's, the optics here are terrible, but it just goes to show that he doesn't care about anybody but himself. And he only threatens members with primary candidates if it's going to impact something that he wants to do in his legacy. But the issue here is there are elections on Tuesday, and those elections are extremely important. And then there's another set of elections in the midterms that are also going to determine the control of the House. And I just think that some of these decisions that President Trump is making and the disregard he has for his own party that doesn't benefit him is going to impact the rest of the Republican Party. And so they need to figure out who they care about, whether it's their constituents in their district or whether they want to keep answering to Trump.
Trump just started a major fight at his home in Mar-a-Lago after escaping Washington to flee his own chaos, the same chaos he and his fellow Republicans created. That alone is bad enough. His constant flying costs taxpayers millions of dollars when he should be in Washington working to push a deal through. But worse than that, he hosted a luxurious, apparently Great Gatsby-style party. The whole point of The Great Gatsby was that it represented the unrestrained, unequal opulence of pre-New Deal, Great Depression-era America, the very thing that was supposed to end forever with the rise of a fairer, more egalitarian republic born out of the New Deal. That was the promise of the post-war period, a promise that millions of American men died and sacrificed for, mostly from the working and middle classes, so that they could build a more just republic for all. And Trump's attitude is basically, forget all that. We're going back to the 1920s. This is angering many Republicans who are fed up. As we covered earlier today, a Republican mayor, several Republican members of Congress, and other local and state officials have spoken out, saying, we have members of our communities, some Republican, some Democrat, some independent, and many are children too young to vote, who are on the verge of starvation. Yet you shirk your responsibilities and party like it's 1929. It's absolute insanity. So it's good to see congresswomen like Jasmine Crockett and AOC, and senators like Bernie Sanders and others speaking out loudly and saying that while Donald Trump is partying and reveling in inequality,